Storytelling is one of the most powerful tools known to man, and there's one storytelling motif I personally put above the rest: man versus nature. Now, it sounds simple, almost an outdated feeling, like something you'd find in a middle school textbook, but when I look back at all the stories I tend to return to over and over again, there's just a slight pattern. And the pattern reveals itself when there is something going against natural order of the world. Now, the older I get, the more I realize that I love the sincerity that this trope forces out of its characters. Because the stories are never really about storms, or elements, or survival. They're about power and ego. These tales are about what happens when instinct outruns its own restraint. And the more I look around, the more I see that we tell these stories constantly. Some stories may have a village threatened by something in the wild. Some may have a creature evolving beyond human control. Some stories have characters who call their recklessness just a part of who they are. And once I realize what type of narrative I'm consuming, I begin to wonder, am I really watching humanity fight nature? Or am I watching humanity confront itself? I've picked out a few stories I genuinely love, and I'd like to talk about them for a minute with you all. One is about a fox who destabilizes his own family because he misses feeling exceptional. Another is about a boy whose grief becomes so absolute that it turns him into something unrecognizable. And then there's a story about a town that survives by cutting down gods of a nearby forest, all while believing they have no other options. 3 different worlds, 3 different narratives with 3 different tones, but they all come with that same exact tension. And maybe that's why I'm so drawn to this theme, because the natural intuition of these characters must be confronted with pure honesty. Now let's take a look at that first story. When I revisit Fantastic Mr. Fox, what strikes me most isn't the conflict with the farmers, it's the quiet conflict inside Mr. Fox himself. At the beginning of the story, he promises his wife that he's done stealing forever. He chooses safety, stability, and the domestic life. And for a while, it really works. But then something unsettles in him. It isn't hunger, it isn't survival, it's comparison. He moves into a tree, overlooking those farms, almost like someone buying a house that they can't quite afford, just to feel a little elevated, a little significant. And that detail really matters, because Mr. Fox doesn't want food. He wants an identity. He wants to feel fantastic again. He wants to feel like the version of himself that used to take risks and get away with it. And when he calls himself a wild animal, it almost sounds romantic. It's also evasive. It's a way of saying, this isn't really my fault. It's just what I am. And that's what makes this story unforgettable. It suggests that instincts can become an excuse, that ego can disguise itself as authenticity. And when Mr. Fox begins stealing again, this time the consequences ripple outward. His wife loses her trust in him. His son feels inadequate and unseen. His community is forced underground. The farmers respond with escalating violence, but they're only reacting. The first disruption came from him. That's what makes this man versus nature story turn inward, because the nature at war here isn't the wilderness, it's pride. And what I love about the ending is that it isn't dramatic redemption. Mr. Fox doesn't defeat these farmers. He doesn't reclaim some glorious outlaw identity. Instead, he learns to live within limits. He adapts. He channels his instincts into something communal instead of selfish. The story doesn't shame his wildness, it reframes it. It suggests that instincts aren't the enemy. Unexamined instincts are. And that's a mature way of handling this type of motif. The Chimera Ant arc is far more brutal and far more existential. It begins like a simple survival story when an invasive species start to emerge, but they begin to evolve rapidly, and they even start to threaten humanity. This is a classic man versus nature archetype, but very quickly, it stops being that because the chimera ants don't remain static monsters. They grow, they question, they develop individuality. Some even remember fragments of their past human lives. Some ants choose to live with loyalty, others adopt cruelty. They aren't just standard predators, they're becoming people themselves. And at the center of it all is Merriam. He's born with absolute superiority, strength beyond challenge, intelligence beyond contest. And at first, he only sees humans as livestock, insignificant, disposable. But then he meets Komogi, someone physically fragile, blind, and weak. And yet, she has an unshakable spirit. She doesn't fear him. She doesn't worship him. She simply exists in her own purpose. And when he's in her presence, something shifts. Merriam begins to question dominance itself. He begins to value connection over conquest. And the most haunting part of this arc is that his evolution toward humanity is mirrored by Gon's descent away from it. Gon's rage over Kite's death begins to consume him. He doesn't just seek justice, he seeks annihilation. He even sacrifices his own future, his own body, his own innocence, all for revenge. And in that moment, the line between human and monster starts to collapse. The ants were born with reflexes and urges, and by the end, they learned empathy. At the beginning of the series, Gon was just some little boy who loved fishing, born innocent and free. But by the end of the arc, that same little boy is abandoning his life completely. If power is left alone with grief and ego, the results might not be heroism. And that's why this arc feels so heavy, because it suggests something uncomfortable. Humanity isn't guaranteed, it's chosen over and over again. Those final moments between Merriam and Komogi were quiet, soft, almost tender. There was no grand battle music, no triumphant speech, just two beings sitting together in their final moments. And that stillness feels more human than any victory. This story asks, if we were given overwhelming power, would we rise above our impulses? Or would we just try to justify them? And that question lingers long after the arc is over. Compared to those first two stories, Princess Momonoke feels elemental, ancient, like a story that could have existed before language. What makes it powerful isn't that humans are destroying the forest, it's that they have reasons. Lady Ibashi isn't a tyrant driven by greed alone. She rescues former sex workers, she employs leapers, she builds a community for people society discarded. Irontown isn't evil, it's refuge. And that's what complicates everything. Because the forest gods aren't evil either. They aren't vengeful monsters. They are embodiments of balance. The boar god Nago becomes a demon not because he was always corrupted, but because hatred infected him. And that detail matters. Hatred is contagious in this world. It spreads through injury, through fear, and through retaliation. Ashitaka's curse is the physical manifestation of that idea. He doesn't hate anyone, yet he carries hatred inside him. And the more violence he witnesses, the stronger it grows. It gives him power. But that power comes from something poisonous. That's such a profound interpretation of man versus nature. The real antagonist isn't industry. It isn't the forest. It's resentment. It's the belief that survival justifies cruelty. Princess Momonoke rejects humanity entirely. She chooses the forest. She identifies as a wolf. But even she is caught in rage. Her pain is understandable. Her fury is righteous. And yet it still consumes her. What I find beautiful is that the film refuses to offer a clean solution. The forest spirit dies, Irontown is destroyed, the gods fade. No one wins. And yet, Life continues. Ashitaka continues to stay near Irontown. San chooses to remain in the forest. They don't merge worlds. They respect boundaries. That ending feels quiet, almost unresolved. But maybe that's the point. Balance isn't a final achievement. It's ongoing work. Unlike many man versus nature stories that end with domination, either humanity conquers the wild or nature overwhelms civilization. Princess Momonoke suggests something far more difficult: coexistence without control, understanding without ownership, responsibility without purity. And maybe that's why it feels timeless, because it recognizes something we're still grappling with today. Progress isn't meant to be evil. Nature isn't sacred beyond consequence. But when ambition outruns empathy, something sacred is lost. When I look back at these three stories, I don't see humans fighting trees. I see restraint being tested. I see ego asking to be justified. I see power asking to be used. I see how fragile balance really is. Mr. Fox calls himself a wild animal, but learns that instincts without responsibility isolates you. Gon reaches for overwhelming strength and discovers that vengeance doesn't restore what has been lost. Irontown cuts down the forest to survive and realizes survival without harmony leaves something behind. None of these stories end with clean victories. There's no triumphant music at the end, no perfect reconciliation, only decisions and consequences. That's what makes this motif feel so timeless, because it really isn't about controlling the wild. It's about confronting the predisposition within us all, the pride that wants to prove something, the grief that wants to destroy something, the fear that wants to control everything. And maybe the reason these stories stay with us is because they remind us that balance isn't automatic. It's deliberate and delicate. It's something we have to choose again and again. These stories aren't being told to get us to erase our ambitions, but to hold them carefully, because the moment power outruns empathy, something begins to rot. And the moment self-control returns, something begins to heal. Because long before we had cities, before we had industries, before we had these animation studios and manga publishers, we were already telling these types of stories. And we're still telling them because we're still trying to learn. If you made it this far in the video, then I really appreciate your time and your patience. If you like the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And hopefully I catch you on the next one.